I'm Katie Evans. I'm a Senior Product Manager for the Digital Science Business Unit from Thermo Scientific. And during this presentation, we're going to be looking at some of the customer stories from where they've deployed Thermo Scientific SampleManager LIMS in the cloud. So we're all personally familiar in our lives with how digital technologies are changing our everyday world. This is from everywhere from shopping, being able to order shopping online, travel, where we can use apps to manage airline check-ins, banking, and how we communicate with each other. The scientific digital ecosystem is also changing how science is done, changing how we interact with our customers and the expectations they have of the software we provide. This is not just how to purchase and use our products, but also how and what products and services we can offer. And this shift in consumer culture is known as the digital transformation. So how is the digital transformation affecting science? 4 areas that I'll talk about here. The first is around the deployment and offering more flexibility in how systems are provided. There's multiple deployment models and choices that can be used. And so there's always going to be a model that will comply with your company's IT policy. One of the key areas is around the use of mobile technology, so the use of tablets and smartphones to both provide control to equipment and access information remotely, being able to do things on the move and be able to make decisions when you're not necessarily actually in the laboratory or at work. A big change is being able to drive business intelligence, and that's turning the data that you have into knowledge through increased data analysis, advanced productivity, and allowing you to make better decisions with the data that you have. And the 4th area is allowing the systems that you work with to be more efficient and more intuitive. So automating workflow-driven systems, making systems easy to use and maintain. So before we go any further, let's just explore a little bit why you might want to use a LIMS. So a LIMS provides information and management of your laboratory from beginning to end of the work that you do. So this is from both the point of creating the data, so being able to create samples and test input customer requests, either manually or automatically through integration to ERP systems or PIM systems, etc. At the point that the data comes in, we have being able to receive those samples into the laboratory, checking the condition of them, being able to record information that is relevant, and being able to use barcodes and actually more increasingly these days RFID technologies to be able to provide traceability, which leads on to the next part. So this is allowing us to have chain of custody around the data, the samples, where they've been, who's been handling them, the storage conditions to which they've been party to, as well as inventory management, not just of the unknown samples that are being used, but of all laboratory consumables, standards, reagents, even glassware. Any samples that are coming into the laboratory are going to be there for a reason. So we need to make sure through the LIMS that the correct tests are being assigned, the samples are being sent to the correct analytical group, and that the people working on them have correct training to do the operations that they're going to be asked to do. Being able to then run the tests through instruments, through CDS systems, and tracking and making sure that the SOPs within your organisation are executed correctly, potentially through something like a laboratory execution system. When the samples and tests are completed, this will trigger a whole new set of operations, specification checking, limit checking, possibly calculations that all feed into a review and approval cycle. So, and this is where the work that's been done is checked, and if it's all correct, results can be approved and sent out. And if things have gone wrong along the way, incidents or corrective action will be put in place. Results can go out in a number of ways. There can be automatically sent back to the system that requested them, so the ERP or the PIM systems. It can also be through formal reports, through certificates of analysis, or just providing information through dashboards. So that was why LIMS is useful, but why might you want to deploy your LIMS on the cloud? So again, there's a number of reasons here. Some of them just give you greater advantages to manage, to control, and deploy the system. It's much more scalable on the cloud rather than fixed hardware that you've had to purchase through a large CapEx expense. There might also be reduced costs longer term because you no longer have to pay to maintain or run huge data centers and necessarily the staff to run them. But one of the biggest advantages is that it allows you to go global in minutes. So being able to access information by analysts anytime, anywhere, even from several thousand miles away. This allows much faster data transfer and easier collaboration. So this talk was about customer use cases and customer stories. So the first use case I wanted to discuss was where one of our long-term customers, Shell, have moved to from on-premise to a customer-managed cloud deployment as part of their recent upgrade. One of the key parts around the upgrade was to look at a way of reducing costs and to future-proof the laboratory infrastructure. And to do this, Shell selected to work with AWS to deploy their systems as part of their wider corporate cloud strategy. Project manager estimated that by moving to the cloud, they managed to cut 6 weeks from their implementation. So that's a significant saving around getting the system up and deployed out to all of the analysts within the laboratory. And they're already seeing advantages around multi-zone subscriptions, allowing better disaster recovery, around allowing the system that they have to be more scalable, so allowing to quickly add CPUs or RAM and storage as they need it. And a couple of quotes from the project manager were that imply or tell us that they found already benefits from this change of model. So one quote is, with AWS Cloud, infrastructure is no longer a bear for us. And we've seen very high interest looking at replicating this model more widely across their enterprise. And this approach is emerging as the way to go moving forward. So I've talked already about there being flexible deployment options. So let's just take a moment to look at the options that are available. Firstly is the on-premise option. This is the traditional model that people have been using for many years. There are still some advantages and some reasons why people might choose to go on-premise. It provides complete control of your LIMS deployment and your infrastructure and gives you complete control around things like your upgrades and validation schedule if you need. But as already discussed, there is some negatives. This is around the CapEx investment on the infrastructure and the hardware, and the fact that the customer is responsible for every aspect of managing backups, high availability and security. So there are two cloud managed options that we're going to discuss, and the first one is customer managed. And this is where the LIMS just will become part of the overall corporate cloud strategy and deployment. So where your organization already has a cloud strategy, LIMS can just be included in that bigger cloud picture. This still has the advantage of the customer having control of the upgrades and validation, but allows them to start leveraging AWS or other cloud provider services for scalability, backup, high availability, and security. You would still need to have some investment in a tech ops team to then manage that deployment. Final option is where Thermo Fisher would manage that cloud environment for you. So this is coming soon, and where we'll offer a service where we would then manage and deploy and leverage AWS on your behalf. You would still have upgrade control in terms of the schedule and when it's going to happen, because it would be within a private cloud for you. But Thermo Fisher will actually be the people performing the upgrade and having access to the server. The thing to be aware of in this situation, though, is that you will have less opportunity to interact with the server. So any changes that might need to be made to the SampleManager LIMS software post go live, you would need to engage Thermo Fisher to perform those changes for you. So it doesn't give you quite the same level of control as on the customer managed cloud. So what are the pillars of a well-architected cloud? And I think these are fairly well established. So it's around security, reliability, performance efficiency, cost optimization, and operational excellence. So security is probably the most important thing that anyone considers when thinking about moving to the cloud. And topics here include confidentiality, integrity of the data, identifying and managing who can do what, having privilege management around that, protecting systems, encrypting the data, both in transit and at rest. So make sure that you're protected against any intercepting of messages, making sure that nothing's going to be able to be got out of that data because of the fact it's scrambled. For reliability, this is about how to take care of all the various different isolated failures. The ability to prevent and quickly recover from failures to meet both business and customer demand. So taking backups, backup retention, being able to do a full system recovery and restore. Making use of availability zones globally, providing no downtime if there's an issue in your particular availability zone. Looking at scalability and self-healing, so thresholds around when and where a system might be increased in its capacity. Performance efficiency helps address uneven workloads. So this is focusing on using IT and computing resources in the most efficient way, where we can select the right resource types and sizes based on workload requirements. But through monitoring, this can be scaled and changed live based on need. And this allows us to have cost optimization, making it very easy to spin up additional resources in the cloud where needed, but also to decommission unused resources at quieter times. So you're only paying for what you need. All of this is around providing operational excellence, making sure that at any point in time, everything's running smoothly, everything's being monitored to delivering business value, continually improving processes and procedures, managing and automating changes, being able to respond to events, defining standards that will allow us to successfully manage daily operations. I talked a little bit about Amazon Web Services availability zones. So we can see that there's a global reach that's available across 22 different regions. And this is important for a couple of reasons. It allows high availability, reducing fault tolerance and low latency. Being able to replicate across regions will help this. But also where certain companies and customers and countries have legislation around where data that's been generated is stored within the same country, AWS allows us to adhere with this. Let's take a little bit of a look at SampleManager LIMS solution, the complete solution for your laboratory. So SampleManager LIMS has got a proven track record around global deployments. It's been built for compliance and allows to give assurance around data integrity, streamlining operations across 4 main areas. The LIMS is the key backbone of the SampleManager environment. SampleManager LIMS allows us to manage samples, tests, making sure that the instruments are calibrated, that the operators are trained, the stocks and standard reagents haven't expired, making sure that everything's being done according to the correct procedures, the correct tests have been done to allow turnaround as quickly as possible for the final result back to the consumer of those results. Fairly new within the SampleManager hierarchy is the laboratory execution system. This has complemented the prior LIMS capabilities by allowing us to add more more information around the LIMS data results that have been captured. So we can actually then monitor exactly all of the pieces of information that happened through the execution of the process of your SOP, and making sure that we can check and trace that everything's been done correctly. It's fully integrated into the LIMS to give full data integrity between the operation of the execution of the method back to the LIMS data results. This is further complemented by the inclusion of a scientific data management system. This allows us to capture the data that's come directly from the instrument, the raw data, and attach that to those final LIMS results that have been stored within the LIMS system. So at any time you can see the data from where the results came from. A further piece in this puzzle is around the integration to the sister product, Thermo Scientific Chameleon CDS, which is an enterprise CDS system. Through having a tight integrated system between Chameleon and SampleManager, it allows us to eliminate many manual steps, allowing you to drive the CDS through the LIMS software front end. The second case study we're going to discuss is ExaminLab. And ExaminLab are a fairly small company who conducts sperm DNA fragmentation testing around male fertility. Until recently, they didn't have a LIMS system, and they'd reached the capacity of what they could do without a LIMS. But with very little in-house or IT knowledge or time to devote to the project, we went straight to cloud because they would allow them to make best use of the resource that they had. So our services team worked with them and provided support through AWS to recommend a correct architecture, disaster recovery plan, and allowed ExaminLab to go live in about 20 weeks. So ExaminLab receives samples from multiple clinical centres or from patient self-referral. And there's a small team of people who will log the samples, run the tests, create the reports. And they've managed to save around 9 working days per month through the reduction of administration around those tasks since the go live of SampleManager LIMS. And ExaminLab used that time saved to allow them to improve the research of their tests and to provide a greater bandwidth of the testing that they can perform. And this slide is just showing some examples of how they've managed to achieve that and some of their reports. So there's different ways of getting the information back out again of the LIMS system, both through reports that can be created and presented in a format back to the analyst or to the clinician that has referred the client. There's also information available through dashboard displays, presenting real-time data in a way that gives KPIs that are relevant to the role of the user that's accessing the system. We've talked quite a lot about deployment and support, and Thermo Fisher's professional services team are ready to help you with your preferred deployment model. This comes from everywhere from product installation and configuration, hardware recommendations, connectivity requirements, provisioning of cloud services, system maintenance, and our TechOps team can provision the cloud services, install and configure SampleManager and related products, and can maintain the solution for you from the point where we offer this hosting option for as a service. So we've talked extensively around the digital capabilities in the lab and data management and how they can improve efficiencies across workflows in the lab. But let's just take a quick look at some of the other areas of digital expertise from around Thermo Fisher Scientific, which are helping our customers lead the change. Our instrument and asset management group are continually looking at ways to drive increased uptime for all lab equipment. So by collecting and monitoring telemetry data and comparing over time, it's possible to predict when an instrument might need servicing or a part replacing. Rather than have an instrument out of service unexpectedly and have to wait for an engineer, it allows you to be able to plan and take it out of service when it's easier for you to manage that impact. This is followed up by a remote service and diagnostic service. Where possible, engineers can use telemetry data to analyse issues with instruments or equipment remotely, and in some cases been able to predict exactly when something might be going awry and provide an on-site visit from an engineer to get you back up and running, sometimes even before you're aware there's a problem. So e-procurement or online procurement has been in place for many years, but now there's far more intelligent enhancements that can be added to this process, where fridges and other units that use to stock standards and reagents can also now have intelligence to monitor use as it happens, auto-decrementing stock and ordering replacements when needed. So you can even have staff scan their badges to identify themselves so correct work groups can be built for the item later. The Apps Lab library is a searchable method library full of analytical applications, searchable online, with a repository where you can go look over 500 methods for analysis by instrument type, sample matrix, or compound. The repository includes analytical methods for the determination of multiple different toxic elements or nutritional information that can be created and tested by Thermo Scientific application scientists. Finally, collaboration capabilities. So for many organisations, the major advantage to adopting digital solutions is in sharing information across different countries, sites, or parts of your business. Bringing all your data together and information into a single platform enables you to truly work together in ways that weren't previously possible, showing you're always moving forward rather than having to repeat work, allowing you to learn and apply best practices from your colleagues. So in conclusion, Thermo Fisher Scientific, the world leader in surfing science, can help you through the application of our technology innovation leadership, our unique customer value proposition across all areas of your laboratory business, and the unparalleled global reach of our organization to help you no matter where you're based.